Good morning, everybody. Happy almost end of June. Um, Everybody who's just watching this recording, you all missed the Monday morning weather chat that we all just had about the crazy weather after this past weekend. So we don't have to recap that. This morning, we are going to be talking about sets and batch editing. So I kind of want to make this a mix of how to actually do it, but also talk about workflow a little bit and how it can be useful to you in your workflows. Um, the and I'll use Fairfield as an example, of course, and we'll go back and forth to the sandbox too. Um, but it's going to be useful just in daily work, but also in doing cleanup for any institutions who are migrating, have migrated, and want to do cleanup of their systems or any projects you have going on. I'm going to share my screen. I want that one. There we go. Make this a little bigger. I never make this big, and I feel like it's probably easier for you guys to see it like this. There we go. Is that more legible than it normally is? We'll see.
Yeah.
Okay. So starting in the sandbox, there's the normal landing page that always has the counts on it. We make sure to set that up for everybody. So that's what you're going to get pre going in and editing your dashboard. This is just kind of a side note. In Fairfield system, this is set up for my page for my login. As we've mentioned previously, like this is all customizable to your specific login. So whatever you do to this landing page will be for that login. You can do something like this. Speaking of, as we're getting to sets, there is one of the little widgets that you can add that's a search by set. So this is really handy if you are using sets on a regular basis and want to go in and out and get to them easily. You can put this little search by set and do object sets. So if you have a particular project, you can go right into it. I have a lot of sets. Some of these are being used, some of them are not. Some of these are for past projects, but there's a lot. These are just everything that I have access to. There's probably a few that are in there that are just for my curator and things like that. We'll probably see them when we go into the whole sets part. I find this really useful. Most of the time, I still just go in and do a jump into the whole collection. Like go up to the counts and just click on physical objects and just go in and go from there. But this is really convenient depending on what projects you have going on. For anybody that doesn't know how to create a set, there's a button up on the top with the new Find, Manage, Import part up here. You can also change the access to this for your users and your access levels. If you want to have just catalogers have access, or like admin and catalogers have access, you don't want anybody else to have access, you can change it around. Actually, let me look at that really quick for you guys. So access control, because a lot of the time I get caught up by this when I'm having an intern work on a project for a workflow thing. They're like, well, I can't see this. And I have to make sure that they're set to do this. So if you're in manage and access control, only admins usually should be able to get to this. Go to access roles. You will see I'm in Fairfield in this, so you can see what we have set up. Go into access roles to see we've got the admin, we've got catalogers. I created a project cataloger, researcher. This is a test one I used to play around for everybody. But if you go into the editable page here, you can go down and look at all the settings for this. And where if you go into, you'll see things along the top where you can do things, administrate sets, have that checked off for them or not checked off for them. And you can go through and just go down to set management if you want them to be able to create sets or to edit sets and set content or not. Usually I don't want them to delete or to be able to delete anything. And actually, since we're in here, I'm going to do that right now. I just actually tweaked it last week to give one of my interns access to it. But you can have all these other things. Do you want to quick add things to sets? Do you want to change types? All of that. So go ahead and before you're working on projects that you have interns or other access levels, check that and make sure that it's where you want it to be for them. Especially make sure view sets is on, is available. So I'm going to just save that. We had talked about access roles and things previously, so I'm not going to get into the whole thing for that, but just mentioning that that's there, to double check it. So back up to the top, we're going to go to manage my sets. You'll get a little bump out that lets you go to either all sets, public presentations, or user sets. There's another bump out that I need to see. I'm going to move us out of the way. Manage my sets. So you can go to here, public presentations, sets by user, if you want to look for a particular one. Like if I wanted to see what my curators got for a set, I can go that way. I'm just going to go all sets here. There's also another up on the top left. So you'll go to the page that lists all of your sets that you have access to. Up on the top left, you'll see what sets you have. So this is still in Fairfield. There's 175 sets available to me, 217 created by everybody. So there's a total of 217. I can see 175. And you can do this show sets here. There's a drop down, pull down, show sets that are available to me by other users or by the public. And I'm not really going to get into the public part of that too much because we're still kind of tweaking that on the public portal. The goal is to ultimately have you guys be able to create publicly accessible sets that'll show up in the gallery. They're still not syncing 100% all the time. So that's something we're still working on. That's going to be one of our next projects because we've got Really Gig finishing up a couple other things, and we'll move on to this. So you can go down, it'll list the name of the set, what's in it, if it's objects, collections. If you go further down, you can do pretty much anything. I just did one for loans last week because it was convenient for a workflow process for me in Fairfield. They weren't searchable. Like you couldn't re-pull the loan set up, but now you can if you're ever in the position to have a bunch of loans that you want to pull together. But you can create the user set containing any of these things. Most commonly, it's objects. Most of the time, I haven't really found a need to do any groupings of any of the other things. So you would do that, but you're going to just go across and see the name, content, the type. If it's a user set, if it's a public presentation, the number of items, very important, can tell you that there. So you can go through, I just went through in the sandbox and got rid of a bunch of sets that had 0 things in them because I think it was just, trial and error kind of stuff with that for people just to create new ones. And it was probably mostly me doing it for demonstration purposes. Then you can see who the owner is, who created the set. The Fairfield admin was our first login before we started giving out individual logins. So I've got a bunch by my curator, I've got some by me. But you can see what they have there. Access, whether something's accessible to the public or not, whether it's restricted public access, which I don't do that one yet because we don't have that set up. So it's not going to be anything that will show up on the public portal. That'll probably come about when we get to the putting sets in the gallery. When the set was created, so you can see all those early ones were first, that was early 2016. That's when we first migrated. So this is just a test. And me working on cleaning up records that were deaccessioned. You'll have the little edit page and then the delete. So if you're done with a set and you want to get rid of it, you can just do that. I don't believe, let me just double check and get rid of, I'm going to try this one because I don't know why I have a set with one thing in it. you won't have the option to like merge it with anything else because of the type of record it is. But it will just ask you, are you sure you want to delete this? Because I have no idea what it is. I am going to go and delete it because there was just one thing in it and I can search for MS39 very easily. So I'm going to delete that. And again, that'll be your one warning, your one notice message on there. What I kind of skipped over was this little magic wand. And that will get you to the batch editing, which we'll get to in a second. I just want to go over sets a little bit more for a minute. We're going to go to the sandbox. So in order to create a set, I mean, you can create them for any purpose. They're kind of artificial groupings of things. It's not anything that is permanent or, you know, administrative necessarily. They're all just for you for workflow for things. Like I said, the public presentation ones for the gallery are a little bit more, you know, good for public viewing and stuff like that. But this is more of just kind of a artificial grouping of stuff, as opposed to like using lots for administrative purposes, like tracking whether deeds of gift were signed or anything like that. Whereas that's more of like a formal grouping of things together in the system. So, hi, Michelle. So creating a set, if you have it for whatever purpose, we started creating them in Fairfield to begin with. I was doing it for administrative purposes for myself, for tracking projects, like that deaccession grouping. I had a lot of stuff that migrated over from our old system that needed to get marked in a certain way. So I did a search. We'll get back to searching in a little bit, probably towards the end, as a way to put things together. I did that as a way to work on that deaccessioning records cleanup project. Then we started figuring out that, oh, we can do sets to try to group things together for an exhibition and choose objects and things like that. So we could have all of us at the time, me, the curator, the librarian who was doing a lot of exhibitions work with us, we could all go in and just put objects on whenever we found them. So then we'd be able to go through at a later date and, you know, review them and say, oh, look, you know, the curator added these objects here. I could pop things in there when I needed to for exhibit purposes. So let me go just into the objects for now. Actually, let me go back to sets. So in the records, actually, let me do this first and then I'll go back into that. So I'm just going to pop into this record on the sandbox for a second. If you're in a record and you want to add it to a set, for instance, if I'm poking through and finding stuff that I can put in for a future exhibit, because we've got a couple sets running for exhibits like a couple years down the road. Just because I always like to know, because I never know when I'm going to trip across something. And I don't want to say, you know, next year sometime the curator says, oh, we're doing this exhibit. And I'm like, oh, geez, I saw some great stuff, but I don't remember what they were. You can kind of just do it as you go. If you're in an object and if you go to admin info, there is a spot right here that says related sets. So this one's in a bunch right now, probably from this doing things. You can add a relationship and link it to a set from here. I think there's a set that's something to do with flowers. Yeah. Possible items, whatever. You can choose the set and add it there. As with anything, click save. Now, when you go to that set, this item will be included. That's a really quick way to add things in, like if you trip across something that's interesting that you need to add to something. To do this, the set needs to be created first. There is an option that'll tell you if say to like create it. It's very clunky this way and doesn't always work the way you want it to, because you'll go in, create it, name it, and then when you save it, it doesn't save the name. It's really weird. I find it easier just to go in and create the set first and then come back and add the object. So for purposes of this too, I'm going to copy this number because when you create a set, it will also ask you for a number. So now we're going to go back to manage my sets again. We're going to go all sets. I don't need to do that. So create, no, user set, objects, yes. So select that the way you want it to, hit the plus to add a new set. And it'll come up first. It won't come up first with like a name or anything for it. It'll come up with adding an object, which is a little weird, but usually you're creating a set with something in mind. So I'm putting in that number from before. I want that man's doublet. Now that I've got something in there, and notice on the left, there's no choices, much like when you create a new record, you don't have anything visible over here. Once you click save, now you have all the content information here. And you can go in and click on, it'll automatically put you in the item section. So you've got that you're editing a user set. We haven't given it a name yet. This is the change the type, duplicate this set, which we'll get into later. Download any of the media for the set, which is useful, and more information about the record, that it was created just now. Number of items in the set is 1, it's objects. Owner is me. So now we're going to go to basic info, and this is where you can put all your information about the set. So we're going to call this set vests. Why? I don't know. The set code, it'll generate itself, so you don't have to put something in. I usually do, just because otherwise it'll come up with that weird just blank thing and everything will have it. And I just usually keep it really short, one word, or just do it all lowercase. It can be whatever you want, but there's no reason to do it like anything grand with it. It's not going to be accessible to the public. The record status, up to you whether you use this or not. For this purpose, I'm just going to leave it as new. I do use this record status button quite a bit to see where I am in records or even in loans. I started doing that as when a loan is currently underway, I put editing in progress. Editing doesn't really have anything to do with it, but then when a loan is closed, because we don't have like a closed open button, I put completed on it. Just a side note for that. But I'm going to leave this new for now. Introduction. When we get this available to more easily be put in the gallery on the portal, you can use this as your opening blurb for the set of items. Like, these vests are an important historical part of the Fairfield collection, and they're wonderful, and here's a variety coming from all the different years, and however you want to put the introduction there. For our purposes and for my behind the scenes purposes of the sets, I just put this notes to myself sometimes, especially with exhibits, to say items under consideration for this exhibit. So, which actually I can say for this. Wish we planned that far ahead. So I'm going to save that. So that's there. This part is very important. I know we've talked about this in the past a little bit, is the user access and the group access. Unless you put somebody in specifically, or a group of users in specifically, other people won't be able to see your set, which is fine if you just have your own project and you don't want to gum up their works with having 80 million sets show up. That's great. But in the instance of like us in early days, putting stuff together to plan an exhibit, we both created more than one set, because I created a set, the curator created a set, and then we had a whole discussion about, no, I added that to the set, you didn't see it, and realized we didn't have access to each other's sets. So we were working in 2 different things. So make sure that anybody who needs access has access. So you can put the username here. I don't remember what the users are in here. I know I've created some really fake ones. Oh, I had an intern. There we go. Perfect. You can click on them to say either that somebody has no access, can just read the information, or can edit the information as well. This is a good thing if you're sharing a set with like your educators, and they don't need to edit or accidentally edit or anything without talking to you. You go ahead and put in like can read, so they can see it, but they can't change anything. Kind of with the has no access, you can definitely block somebody from getting it, or just don't give them any access here and they won't be able to see it. You can also do it for a period of time. So you can say that the intern can edit it until a certain date, until because then they're done or their project has to be done or whatever. So you can save that and give them, they can edit it until this. So I don't know if I have any other. Oh, here you go. So we're going to give Susie volunteers working this project. They can edit it like forever until you take that away. The other option is to add group access. This is great if you have a ton of volunteers or interns working on something, but you don't want to add everybody individually. It's just kind of a hassle to add like 20 people. But when you went in and created that login initially, hopefully, or you can go back and fix this too, you added them to a group. Let me go into Fairfield for a second and just look at that really quickly, because we've talked about it before, but just so it's part of the context of this. So if we're managing access control again, so here's all of the individual users that I've got in Fairfield, some active, some not. And then there's the user groups that I've created in Fairfield. So I actually have, everybody is in an all Fairfield, usually in an all Fairfield group, meaning everybody from our institution. Cataloger group, there's an administrator. I put Fairfield admins for specific people, and this is actually originating back to that trio of people that we had working on exhibits. We were all in that. There was a PCOP project that we did, so I just have people in that. And then volunteers group I have. So if we go back to the user logins, let me do Alec, who's not there anymore, so I can kind of mess with his login a bit. So he was in as a cataloger, and I also had him, you can roles, or you can only assign one role to somebody, but groups, you can assign a person to as many groups as you want. That's really handy for, again, cataloging projects that you have a bunch of people working on. So you could even create a group that's like that PCOP project is just a certain amount of people. To select more than one, it's the same way you select multiple things. In general, hit Control and then click on the button and you'll get that extra one. If you just randomly click, it'll just select one thing. But if you hit that Control button, you can select multiple items. So I'm gonna, actually, we'll do this just for kicks. So now I've got, him in all of these groups. I'm gonna save that. Side note too, actually, because I don't know if I've told you guys this or talked about it a lot. If you go in to edit somebody's record, it'll show up like this password and confirm password will be blank. It won't even have like the little string of stars in it. So it makes you think that you need to put the password in. You do not, unless you are changing their password for some reason. Just, you don't have to pay any attention to that. Just leave it blank like that and it'll keep the same password they've always had. So I'm just going to cancel that and go back to this. So going back to manage my sets, so go back to the sandbox. So you can add the group access here. I don't think get an asterisk, it'll pull anything up now. Actually, let me do it in Fairfield as an example because I don't remember what the groupings are in the sandbox. So get back to sets again. Oops. How that came up is it when I started typing that. So I'm going to save this. Just making something up. just so I can get to that other part again. And get down to this user access bottom part. So I'm going to say for my group access, I'm going to put in all of Fairfield is going to have edit access to this. And I'm not going to put it, I've hardly ever used the time limit thing. I definitely think it's a cool option to have. I've not needed it, but it's a cool option. And I have a volunteer set. So I'm going to say that the Fairfield can edit, volunteers can read it. And click save. So then anybody that has those logins will see that set. And that way I don't have to go in and put down every single person or everybody in education or everybody in the institution. So it's a good thing to assign people to a group when you create their logins. If you've been working in sets, it will show up on your history button. So much like anytime you go into a record, then it'll start showing up in the history. It'll do that for the sets as well. So it'll go down to, here's our duplicate, here's my blank one that I just did before, and I'm not saving anything here. So we're back in sets and we're back to editing what you can do with the sets and the basic information. And that's all set up here. So we're fine. So both Ida and Susie, when they log in, will be able to see this set. This is where we get to going back to our list of stuff. This is also when you get up here and you've got show sets available to you by other users, by the public. Again, ignore the by the public, but you can see by other users. Oh, and hit the little arrow. And here's all the other ones that are like not me that I can see. If you've got going to Fairfield again, because I know what some of these sets are. So I want to manage my sets. I'm looking for, let me go back to the list actually, because that's where I want to start. If you're looking for a set, say your curator or somebody else did one and you want to look for it because you have an insane amount of sets, you can just start typing in the search box and it'll go to that set for you. Like I know we have a set for our Alice in Museum Land exhibit. This is the main one that we started, and then I had a batch edit for a reason with the same items. So I can just go to that and it'll pull everything up from that set rather than having to scroll up and down that insane list. Because I have had a couple things that I'm like, I don't remember what the letter is for this. I don't know what we called it. We had an exhibit on the Fairfield Hunt Club, and I couldn't remember what we called the set because I called it one thing and then the curator had actually created it and called it something different. So it's easier just to search and it'll pull that up for you. I'm going to go back to the list just for kicks. I'm going to say available to me. Actually, let me go to the sandbox because I want to get into the next part for this. And you can also always do the asterisk up here too, I think. Yeah, you can just do by other users and by everybody and it'll show up. Okay. So we've got a bunch on here that we can play around with. So going across, you can check off things to do different things with them. Ooh, this is actually new. I've not done this yet. This is kind of cool. You can create a new set by checking this off from a combination of the two selected sets. That's kind of a cool option to have, which is actually really good. And I wish I'd known that 8 million years ago when we were creating two sets that we couldn't see, because I could have done that and merged it at the same time. I love when I find new things when I'm doing these. So we're just going to go, whoops, get rid of her. We're just going to go to, which has a decent amount of stuff. Oh, and this is what'll show up when you like create something on the fly. If you don't go back and change the title of something, it'll just show up as this blank set 53, basically. So you can always go back in and edit that and give it a name. Otherwise, it'll just show up as a weird blank. What was the one I was just going to play with? Well, let's do this flowers one because I mess with this one all the time. And this is one of the ones that I like to use for an example of what you can do with batch editing. So what you decide to go in and batch edit depends on what project you're working on and how you want to deal with stuff. So I find it really useful to add, if we're doing like exhibition type stuff, to add the exhibition credit to everything, to add it to the exhibit, works really, really well. So you don't have to go and do things one by one. So anytime you want to batch edit something, and I will preface this as I always say, be careful with batch editing, because once you run it, it will make all the changes. And if you need to fix it or undo it, you have to go back and do that individually. So you make sure you're doing what you want to do rather than like do it on the fly or when you're half asleep or in a hurry or something. Anytime you want to batch edit, you can click this little magic wand and it'll tell you on that little pop-up that you're batch editing. And what you'll see is basically shortened version of what your data entry screens look like, your overall data entry screens. If you've got a custom page or something like that that you're usually working with, it will show up here. So like this in the sandbox, I've got an inventory page that I did. So if you've got certain ways that people are working with stuff, and ideally you're not really going to want to have interns or volunteers do this, and they probably shouldn't have access to the batch edit. But if you did, like their pages would still be visible. But we're going to talk about it like those pages don't exist. So you'll see the pages in the regular order that you see them in your record: basic information, physical characteristics, geography, all of this stuff. And you'll see the order of the fields like you would, and it'll give you an option of, in the batch, do not use or set for each item. So one thing is good for big groupings of items of records that you're editing. You may have added them, but you don't want to go in and put a corrected credit line in all 200 records individually. You want to go in and just take care of it all at once. So you could do something like this. I want to do you can add to each item, replace values, or do not use. So it won't do anything to that. We want to add to each item. Oh, and you can remove all values too. For sake of this, we're going to replace values. What happens if I add? Curious. So I'm going to say for this batch, the credit line is going to be, Mabel did not give us these, but they're hers, but we're just going to put that in there. So that'll add that to each record. I'm also going to add the exhibition label, and I'm going to add to each item. I don't know why I keep putting exclamation points behind all of this. It just makes it sound exciting, I guess. I don't know. Okay. So we're going to execute this batch edit. And it'll also tell you, much like the system likes to warn you of things, which I find really useful. It'll warn you and be like, ooh, you know you're about to do this, right? And like it says, these changes cannot be undone. Like you can go in and hand enter them one by one, but you have to go hand enter them one by one. It'll also say process in background, which I never need to do because I'm not like doing all 10,000 records in the system all at once. If you are doing a mass change in your whole system, yeah, sure, check it off so it's doing other stuff while you're doing this, but it's usually so quick you don't need to. And it'll say send email to info collective access or whatever the main one is. It's whatever your login info is that you're seeing this. So it'll say I'm processing in the background, and then it'll send an email to that email. That's what we've got set for this system admin login for the sandbox, but I'm not going to bother with those. So we're going to execute batch edit. And I mean, it's only 13 records, but it took 2 seconds to do. So now you can actually go into, oh, let me get to that in a second too. when you go into these records, you can go down and see that Mabel Osgood Wright created and donated. When I forgot the letter and name. So this is a really good example of going in and fixing something. So I can go in and be like, I just spelled her name wrong. I can go back and batch edit it and fix this. And now it's also created this additional exhibition label. So it's not going to add another credit line because you only have the option for the one. Whereas under things like exhibition label, if you're adding to it, it'll just create that next instance of that field. What did I call this? Okay, so that's one way to go in and do the batch edit. You can also do it from the main list. I'm just going to go to manage my sets again to get that whole thing. You can do it by clicking on the little magic wand right there, and it'll go in to directly batch edit that set. And it'll go and do that same thing here. So we're going to fix our credit line. With her name spelled correctly this time. So execute batch edit again. It'll take 2 seconds. And you can go into the record and her name should be correct. Yeah, now the T's there, so it's fine. But all the other stuff that we did in that last batch edit is there. Going back to the sets again and managing my sets and all sets, there was the, go into that guy, where it's got the basic info page. Oh, actually, no, I wanted to go to the list. Sorry. And I wanted to go to the batch edit. So you've got the big box that says you're batch editing these 13 things from this group, and this batch contains still images. And then you see this little more options button, and this big scary red box pops up with this bomb where it says delete all records in the set, and also set type for records in the set. The setting the type for the records in the set is very useful, and it's not super scary with the big red warning. The bomb is literally will delete all, and not just delete the records from the set, it'll delete the records from the system. So that is I've used it once, and it was when I accidentally duplicated a bunch of records when I was trying to fix a deaccession. And I went through and deleted it that way. That one is be very, very careful with that one, and make sure that you want to not just delete records from the set or take them out of a set. That's something different. This is deleting the records from the system. And if you ever do that accidentally and you're like, oh my God, I didn't realize, you have to get in touch with us so we can get in touch with Seth at Whirligig, and he'll have to go and pull it from a backup. And like reinstate it. So if you ever do that accidentally, of course, tell us as soon as possible so we can get that underway so he doesn't have to go in and try to like find something that you did 3 weeks ago and that will in the meantime erase all the work that you've done in between all that. So set type for records in the set is a lot easier. Like these are all still images. If I wanted to say, well, actually it's a physical object, you could change it to that to do all that. I did do that when we first migrated our data from our old system because there was a bunch of stuff that didn't match up and didn't get put in the way that we wanted to. So I have done that before. Oh, let me talk about duplication. I have it written down in big letters on my notepad so I didn't forget. This came up ages ago. We'll keep going with this one. This came up ages ago when we had talked about doing sets previously. So there is an option. We'll use the same one. So there's the copy icon up here that says duplicate this user set. And there's also an option down here, duplicate items in this set and add to either the current set or a new set. something like that. And this came up when somebody's saying, well, I have this original set, but I want to create a related one that has all the same objects. And this is how I accidentally duplicated a bunch of stuff ages ago, is I tried one of these buttons and it not only just duplicated the set, it duplicated the individual records in the set. So I had a lot of duplicates of like all of this stuff. This duplicate up here, there's a setting so you don't do that down under my preferences. Hold on, I have to move this box up a little bit. There we go. The preferences that we went over a couple weeks ago, there's a setting here so that you don't duplicate actual records. So you're just duplicating the set. So at this point, if I'm hitting this, it'll come up and want you to add objects here and duplicate the set in the basic info. And it doesn't have any items in it. So that's fine. You're saying this is the other one. Let me get back to the list. I should have made this something with A at the top so I can see it. Oh, this is our duplicate. We can add that later, but so duplicate items in the set and add to a new set. If we do that, click the little arrow. So we already duplicated this and duplicates are not permitted. So you can't do it twice by accident. Oh, let me go to that preferences thing here because I turned mine off ages ago. So if you're in preferences, this is still in the sandbox, popping over here. You've got your list of individual options over here. If you guys haven't used this or tried it yet, we did do an office hours about it last month, something. So there's a whole discussion about a lot of this. So you can go in and check that out. But for this purpose, you want to go to duplication. And this is just preferences for your own login. This does not affect the whole entire institution. This is just for your login. So you go under duplication, there's a lot of options for individual records, objects, entities, all of that. But also if you go all the way down, there's options for sets. So you can say, do you want to duplicate non-preferred labels, which is alternate names or alternate titles rather. That just, the wording just didn't get changed over. Duplicate relationships. Yes, I usually do. And this is just duplication of this. Duplicate items, you want to click no, unless you want to duplicate records for something, but I really can't think of a reason to do that. But make sure this is changed to no, that way you won't create new records. Let me turn this to yes for a second. And duplicate set metadata, that's if you want to say, always say this set is only for internal use. So put something like that in. I'm going to click save for a second on this and go back to let's go to this flowers one. Although it just, let me go back to a different one because it was yelling at me about duplicates anyway. Let's go back to whichever one this one is. So this is duplicating the user set this way, that's fine. If we want to duplicate items in the set and add to a new set. Oh, and I just duplicated, so it's yelling at me. Okay. Just testing this. Oh yeah, so here's all of these Maple as Good Right things that duplicated. So now everything's got this little duplicate in it afterwards, which came off of that duplicating the set from before. So it didn't initially show up when it was in that, but it shows up if you go and search for duplicate. So if you were searching for, you know, whatever your number is, now you're like, wait, why do I have two of these? Because one of them got duplicated when you did the set. This is also a good way if you accidentally do this and need to get rid of them, search duplicate will, like in the title, will have them all show up. I'm going to go change this preferences back before I forget, although it's in the sandbox, so it doesn't really matter. Duplication. Sets. Duplicate items. No, save. Getting close to 11, so just a couple notes with your sets in workflow. Oh, actually, let me use that duplicate example. So you're in a workflow that you want to fix a bunch of records or update a bunch of records. And so I'm searching for duplicate. Some of these are not duplicates. It's just got the word duplicate in there somewhere, but we want to create a set for that. So you're going to go to your full results to get kind of your spreadsheet view and click on set tools. So you can create sets from lists of things when you do a search, and you can either create a set from this, from whatever your search term was, which is very handy because a lot of the time that's what you're going to be looking for is all of your blankets or something like that. So you want to create a set called blankets. So you can create it from all of the results in your search or from the checked items in your search and create there. So these teeny tiny little check boxes will show up, or you can just do the big check at the top and then uncheck things. Like these are all saying duplicate. This is fine. This is, I want all of these so far. Double duplicate from something. I think that was it. Enter project. I don't want that letter in there. You do have to click save to add it to that set before you change pages. Because then if you check the page and do that and try to go back, it'll be unchecked. So check what you want, save it to the set, and then change the page. Or if you know it's everything, you can just say from results. When you're doing this, especially if you're doing this for a cleanup project and you know you want to batch edit something, you can open for batch editing the same time you create it by clicking this off. Click and create. I'm going to create that in a second. But just to say, you can also, if you're adding things to a set and your scope of your exhibit just changed and you're going to say it's an exhibit on vests and coats, and you just did a search for all your coats, you can add all of the checked items to an existing set without having to go in and add things one by one. So I'm going to click create on that. It's open for batch editing. So now we've got 27 objects in the set that say duplicate and that same batch edit formula. So I'm going to put in the notes, add to each item. Please check. Wait. Just delete it because we're in the sandbox, so it doesn't matter. But say you wanted to put a note about whatever onto all this as you created your set. So then add credit line or whatever you want to put there in whatever field. So I'm going to execute batch edit to all those 27 objects. Yes, I'm sure that I want to do that. Doesn't take that long. So then we can go in and see that our notes here for all of this. I have not extensively tried this with the, like as a find and replace. I don't know that there's that capacity to like go in and say, find the word duplicate and remove it. I haven't tried it because I've been a little leery of trying that. So don't assume that you can do like a search and replace. It's usually like if it's a replace, I believe it replaces the whole field. If you want to play with it in the sandbox, feel free. Okay, let me just go back to Fairfield for a second. Say, will do available to me. Where's my deaccession list? Oh yeah, so deaccession to review. This was a bunch of stuff that I just put. Oh, there's that stupid clock. That clock is the bane of my existence. It shows up in every time I log onto the system. I have a love-hate relationship with it now. But you can go in and say, oh, this is this basic info. I don't think I put a, yeah, I didn't put like a whole introduction, but this is a good spot to put more specifics about need disposal dates or something like that to work on a project. So then you can assign your interns, volunteers to a set and go in and keep track of it as you go. Oh, let me go into the set for a second. You can see all of your set items here. You can rearrange the order. I haven't found a ton of need for this, except I have done this with like a quick inventory check or when I'm going to find objects for an exhibit or putting all the chairs together or something. You can reorganize it and save it, just dragging and dropping it that way. Sort by name, sort by identifier. There's the PDF export up here that you can download the whatever display you have. I've used this for, where's my location? Confirmation list. I've used this for going and pulling stuff for an exhibit that I can go and find everything and just have a list to do it this way. I'm going to download and see if it shows up in here. Because otherwise you guys might not be able to see it because it'll be in another window. Yeah, I think it just goes straight to downloads, but or you can just go straight to displaying and printing it. Oh, there it is. It just comes up like this because of the display that I chose. And this is just like a PDF checklist with the images and things. So can be useful. I usually do it in a different way to get something like that to go through, but just an option to be able to, another thing that you can use it for. If you want to add things to a set, like you've got a list, your intern went in and gave you all, wrote down all the numbers of what you need, you can just add the object there and it'll come up like the pull down as soon as you start entering something in. So I'm going to put this guy in. Do you have to save as usual with anything here? I feel like there was one other thing I was going to tell you about this display. I think mostly it was that though. You can just start adding objects like this. So there's a couple different ways to add things into a set. If you've got a list of numbers, you can add it this way. You can do a search to pull stuff together and use that set on the side and add it to an existing set. There's a couple different ways of going about it. Let me get back to my list. Go back to my deaccession thing. This was off of a search that I did of things that were deaccessioned, but it's still showing up as being at the institution. So it's going through and double checking all of this. And you can do various searches like the search builder to find fields that are empty or that you need to do. So I will leave this for now. It's already 11 o'clock and I'm going to stop recording.